Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
Oh, how's it going, gentlemen? Welcome to yet another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. As always, I am your host, Scott McKay. You can find me on X, on True Social, on YouTube, and on TikTok at Scott McKay, that's with one T, and at Real Scott McKay on both Threads and Instagram. If you are someone who has never visited our website before, gotta head on over to mountaintoppodcast.com and check it out. Lots of free stuff there for you. And also, the Mountaintop Summit on Facebook is waiting for you too, gentlemen. Join us and the thriving group of guys who are talking about how to get better with women and to be better men in the process. And that's all there for you on Facebook at the Mountaintop Summit. My returning guest today is a transformational relationship mentor and author who comes from Walnut Creek, California. This is like the third or fourth time he's been on the show. Dr. Gary Sawyer, welcome back, man.
Thank you, Scott. It's been a while, but it's been good, man. I'm glad to see you again.
Yeah, man, it's probably overdue to have you back on the show, so I'm glad you're here too. And the topic today is a great one. One that after 400 and some odd episodes of this show, we've never done before. How you date predicts if you'll last. You know, Gary, here's a poignant reminder that every time any of us go to a wedding, we can just get the vibe from the couple and the way things are going, whether this marriage is going to last or not. You know, my wife and I have whispered to each other at weddings, I give it 6 months, and my wife will laugh, you know. But we kind of can see the forest for the trees, even when couples sort of have a blind spot, can't we?
We can. And, you know, I can remember some people telling me that in my second marriage. Turned out to be true.
Yeah, people told me that in my first marriage too. Like, are you really sure you want to marry this woman? Can we talk about this more? Because they don't want to pry, but they care at the same time, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, right. So, you know, why do couples get married when there are these red flags that are obvious to quite literally everyone else, but not necessarily to the couple? Is it just pure desperation, or, you know, is it a shotgun wedding, or what's going on there, Gary?
Well, I'm going to answer one question. We're here to talking about what predicts you having a good relationship, right? And I'll answer that question in a minute. If you are anywhere near online dating apps especially, you are being asked a bunch of questions based on compatibility. Compatibility. How much do you like rock climbing? How much do you like Pilates, right? All these, and it gets pretty, the Christmas list gets pretty long sometimes. Now, they've done research on, does compatibility predict? I talk about this in my book, Save to Love Again. And what they found out is that compatibility does not predict lasting. And in fact, the more you use compatibility past a certain decent level, the more it predicts a breakup. And the reason is that what creates lasting isn't huge, voluminous, amounts of compatibility. Like I had a client walk in and they had an Excel spreadsheet with 65 different items on it of everything they wanted. Another one had 57. I even talked to another coach who had a woman that had 250. And what I said to point out that everything that she's asking for, the man will ask for back and see how she feels about that. Now, what they did find predicts lasting is how well you do relationship repair. So are they good at feeling your feelings, registering them, and responding in ways so that when there's a disruption, and there's always disruptions, there's always disagreements, there's always hurts that creep in, how good are they at reaching out in a secure way and saying, that hurt me without and the repair is timely. You guys can work it out in a decent way. It doesn't cost you your soul. That is the predictor. How well do they do repair? After the 4 or 5 compatibilities, the longer the list, the more you're banking on something. What really predicts is, are you paying attention to how when there is disconnections, misunderstandings, how they deal with it. There's your gold. That's how you do it.
Well, you made it sound so cut and dried and so simple. It's almost as if we could just close the show right now and everybody's got their answer, but it can't be that simple, can it?
No, it is not. Relationship repair takes some pretty good skills. I'm simply debunking the idea that the more you have these algorithms for compatibility, the more it predicts lasting. In fact, Christian Rudder, in his book Dataclysm, who was the president of OkCupid, ratted out the whole industry. They know from their own internal research that these algorithms that predict compatibility equals lasting chemistry, no prediction. Because what people are saying they want is different than what they select for when they get one-on-one.
Well, that's very, very true. I mean, it's well documented, first of all, that on online dating sites in particular, even if it's not eHarmony or one of those sites that's built around a compatibility questionnaire and the secret algorithm that they use to decide who they're going to send you and match you up with, women in particular will list this litany of checkboxes. You've got to be over 6 feet tall. You got to make over $100,000. And that's because women are simply following the instructions. That's what we were taught to do in school. It used to be on Match.com back in the early days, the narrative that you would write would be called your personal essay, just like you were in school. And the question tied to, quote unquote, your personal essay was, who are you and what are you looking for? And of course, back in 5th grade, Gary, if you didn't answer the question according to the assignment, you would get like a C- or a D+, right? So people were going, well, I'm this person and I live here and I do this. Don't really have much to say, but I'm looking for this person, yada, yada, yada. And the next thing you know, you had a bunch of generic profiles that were boring as hell because people simply didn't want to color outside the lines because that's not what they were taught in 5th grade. And then they were asked a series of boxes, and women in particular would go, well, I mean, if this is a made to order situation, I'm imagining a Ken doll, so he's, black hair, blue eyes, 6'1" exactly, and has a doctorate degree and makes $150,000 a year. Bada bing, there's my guy. And what would happen is guys like me who weren't that guy, and oh, by the way, every time you start listing a descriptor and demanding it, at least ostensibly on paper, what you're doing is you're decreasing your dating pool by just a whole lot. So by the time you're looking for a Catholic, 6'1" exactly guy who's got black hair and blue eyes, who's got black hair and blue eyes, right? And then makes as much money as what, 1% of the population? This poor lady doesn't realize it, but she's down to 1/1000th of the population. There's a needle in a haystack who fits this description. And what's happening is, since men write women first, back in the good old days at least, or bad old days if you're a guy and you don't know what to write, right? What ends up happening is guys look at this woman's profile and go, well, I can't match up to that, so I'm going to skip her. And then she comes to guys like us and goes, why aren't I getting any dates? But meanwhile, as they used to say in the Hall of Justice League, right, and Super Friends, meanwhile, she goes out on a date with a guy who's 5'8", who makes her laugh and makes her feel safe. And the next thing you know, and he doesn't even, have a degree, and he makes maybe $85,000 a year, drives a used car. But because of the way that guy makes her feel, the next thing you know, they're hitched up in 6 or 8 months. It's just, that's how life works. But what's typical is we do feel tied to what our standards are. And Gary, 2 things there. I mean, you gave us so much to unpack there. First of all, we've gotten into a culture where this is all about what we want. I mean, it went from being transactional, okay, I'm going to get into a relationship with you because I need these things in my life. And I guess, I'll concede these other things to you because otherwise you won't marry me, to people even losing that latter perspective. And nowadays, especially amongst younger people, it's like, here's what I want, give it to me. And, women will be like, why won't this rich guy marry me and take care of me? And guys are like, why won't these chicks spread their legs and let me have sex with them? The whole idea of someone else getting something out of this relationship that I'm in with them seems foreign. So, I mean, that's the first thing. The second thing is people come up with the most obscure, ridiculous measures of compatibility. Like I've seen on online dating profiles. This is a woman talking to guys, okay? If your favorite band isn't Coldplay, don't bother. It's like, first of all, no straight guy's favorite band is Coldplay. Second of all, who cares? I mean, I guess he could have like serial gambling addiction and be a wife beater potentially. But, if he likes Coldplay, oh my God, you're my guy. So Gary, to kind of land the plane here, people put this list of things together. And what happens is if they meet someone, that person could check every box. We graduated from the same school. We both like to eat sushi. We both are into painting with watercolors, whatever it is they put on the list. If the person sitting in front of them is disgusting to them and isn't sexually attracted to them, all of that will just be washed under the bridge going, yeah, well, I'm still not going on a second date with you. But, and this is the kicker, if they go out on a date with someone and the attraction is there and the chemistry is there and they like each other and they get along and they can't wait for a second date, they can't wait to rip each other's clothes off, my goodness, the simple fact that both of them have one thing in common on that long list of whatever he or she brought to the table with them makes it as if God himself ordained that this relationship is going to work. People make emotional decisions about whether they like and are attracted to someone, and then they try to back the logic into the parking space. Do you know what I mean?
Early on, you made a very important statement. Is how he made her feel.
Yes.
And what we're talking, the bottom line for attachment, for whether a relationship feels lasting, is what feelings are running between the people. The two things you're really looking at when you're dating, after a certain amount of physical chemistry and a modicum amount of compatibility. Okay, somebody wants to live in a 4,000-foot home in the burbs, and another one wants to live in a teepee. Maybe not so compatible. But once you get past that, it's these feelings. I argued in the book. Attachment is all based on feelings. That's the science of it. How do you feel? And the thing that I know from working with those singles who find good relationships and then wind up being in committed relationships and marry, and the couples that I work with, is there a we? So you're tracking feelings and you're tracking how you give them, and what you're receiving. And in what I'm arguing that if you really want to know how to keep a lasting relationship, track 4 feelings and a we. And what 4 feelings are they? And then how you get back to these feelings when there's relationship repair. So it's track the feelings, track the repair, track the we, right? All right. So the feelings are, the first feeling that tells someone that they're loved is welcomed with joy. Welcome with joy. It's like, do they light up when they see you? Do you light up when you see them? Me and my wife, every morning wake up, it's like Christmas. We're just happy to see each other. That has to happen. Do you feel like you are welcome in their life, truly welcomed? Another feeling, one of the 4 feelings, is worthy. Worthy is the ability to reach out for your needs and know that you'll get a timely, attuned response back. Timely means you're not waiting 2 months. Attuned means if you are needing X, they don't give you C. Does that make sense? If you say, honey, I really feel like I'm really, really tired today. I need to get some rest. And they go, but you promised to get the mow the lawn. You've made a bid and they didn't even pick that up. That's not very worthy.
Okay, before you go to the next 2, let's comment on the first 2.
Okay.
Gary, I know people who are married who don't even like each other. Either it was all about sexual chemistry and that wore off after a period of time, and now they realize they just can't stand each other, or they didn't care. They were just so desperate to be married and to, solve the biological clock problem, for example, that they just took whoever could fog a mirror because they were desperate. Now these two can't stand each other. We know couples like that. To your second factor there, we know couples who don't even know each other. It's well documented on this show. I kind of rant about it often. We had met a couple one time who had been dating for 18 months and they didn't even know each other's last name. And we've also met couples who are in different countries and can't or won't emigrate to each other's country to be together, and yet they're engaged and he's sending her a diamond ring. These two have never even met each other. Situations like that to me are symptomatic of a state of mind where I don't want to know more about you. Because if I come up with a deal breaker, we'd be forced to break up, and then I'd have to start all over again, and I'd be lonely. And so I'd just rather not know. So people, even if they are in the same zip code with each other, they start off almost immediately with Netflix and chill, and they're sitting in the dark watching movies together for 2 years, and they don't even know. They don't even know each other.
Yes.
There's no depth to this. They don't know each other.
Yes, they don't. And this is the problem of basing the value of a relationship on chemistry, which is doomed to fail. The sort of welcome with joy that comes with the first few months where you get a dopamine rush, that is not the welcome with joy we're talking about. You have to be able to move a relationship past initial attraction into what's called the trust building phase. And this trust building phase that starts 2-3 months into it, maybe 6, is all about, can I trust that you'll be here for me, that you will read me, that you can really build what's called love maps. You really get to know each other. You are fond and you appreciate and you're grateful for who that person is. If you want a predictor for lasting, it's not the initial Netflix and chills. It's not the sexual chemistry. That needs to be there. But the bigger piece is you just enjoy being in each other's circle.
Well, the T word matters too. You just said a magic word, trust.
Yes.
I've done interviews where women ask me, well, how can this guy have dated her for 2 years and broken up with her, and then 6 weeks later he's engaged when he wouldn't marry her? I mean, he was a commitment phobe until this next bitch came along. Well, it's because he didn't trust her. I mean, she may have been a placeholder because she wasn't really what he was looking for till he met someone he was looking for. Yeah. But a lot of times it was like, well, I'm having sex. I have a girlfriend, but deep down, I just don't trust her. Either because, for example, she's double standard chick and she can flirt with the waiters at the restaurant, but if he so much as, apparently looks at another female human being, he gets a rolling pin upside the head because men are all dogs and women are all angels. Either there's this double standard like that, or he just feels as if she's withholding something or not telling him something or doesn't give him straight answers, or gets angry and defensive when they start having these moments where they're trying to just talk and get to know each other. So, I mean, this is a situation where the guy was like, all right, I'll keep you around for a while. It's better than having nobody. But when someone who checks more of these boxes that we're talking about that really matter comes along, well, all of a sudden your commitment phobic guy is relationship ready. I mean, what a magical transformation. And it was because of a lot of the things you're talking about.
Well, Scott, I want to say, if a guy is sleeping with a woman and won't commit to her and breaks up in 6 weeks engaged, from my point of working with relationships for 17 years, there's a red flag more on him. That means he's using her until he finds what he wants, which is, that's not a cool thing. I mean, it may be.
Well, yeah, we've already allowed for that.
Yeah.
That's clearly a possibility.
And so the trust is, I would say, whoever the next person is, if they don't see that as a red flag, there's something very off in that. Because the real issue of trust, there's a science to trust. And what they found out is trust is based on me seeing an essence in you that's unique to you, that is so important, so dear to me, what I call cherished and protected, that I will make sure that essence is protected. Whatever it is, just the way, the essence is like how she laughs, the way she shows up for people, how caring. You get their essence and they get yours. And when there is that sort of cherishing and protecting, seeing an essence, you want to naturally protect it, just like you would your great-grandmother's engagement ring that's been in the family for 5 generations. You don't put it on the counter hoping that the dog swallows it. Well, what happens is in these interactions, when you cherish and protect something, trust is built on, I will not sacrifice your needs so I can have a win. I mean, I will not give you a loss so I can have my own win. I make sure that we both have wins. I make sure that I don't betray your needs so I can have my needs. In the situation you gave me, if a guy is sleeping with a woman and in a relationship won't commit and then gets engaged, he is sacrificing her needs, which means at some level, he's not all that trustworthy. What you want to look for, and it happens, I've heard it happen for guys that have been with and wanted to marry somebody, and then all of a sudden somebody, taller or better looking or wealthier comes along. I've heard it from both sides. The real issue here, if you're looking for trust, is do they hold your interest at the same level as yours, and will they betray? The opposite of trust is betrayal. When you know that they're not going to sell you out for their own needs, that's when you've got trust. And there's a testing period. This is why, from around 6 months for another year and a half, they call it loyalty and trust building stage. The arguments and the differences are all there to see, will you be in my corner and value my needs the same as yours? Will you betray, or are you trustworthy? That's a huge thing to look for. And you got to have some conflict. You got to know how people deal with their differences and their different needs. And if you're dealing with somebody that you can see constantly leverages their own interest at your expense.
Well, that's when it becomes transactional, and that's pandemic. It's like the new pandemic.
That is a red flag.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yes, you'll never build a we there. You'll never build a we. Yes, and no we, no lasting.
So a couple of things there. First of all, hopefully I'm not in direct conflict with peer-reviewed studies, but this idea of trust building, to me, it's always been based on two simple concepts. First of all, does this person have consistency of good character? Do I know who I'm dealing with? Are they doing the right thing when nobody's looking? And are they doing that consistently? The second thing is, do I get this person? Do they get me? Do we think alike? Are our brain waves aligned, or however you want to term it? I have couples who call me up, and the guy or the woman, doesn't matter. They'll say to me, well, my significant other of 6 months or 6 years said this to me last night. What do they mean by that? You've had that happen, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then what I'll always say to them in return is pretty much the same thing, Gary. Well, how would I know? Why don't you ask them? And then they'll almost invariably respond like Homer Simpson. No, yeah, I could never do that. Well, these people don't have a connection. They don't trust what's going on in each other's heads. My wife and I, admittedly, on major matters of compatibility, not about whether we both like pineapple sherbet or listen to Coldplay or whatever, but major matters of compatibility. Think alike on a lot of things. We think a lot alike in terms of the God we pray to, who we vote for, what we eat for dinner, what we like to do on vacation, how we parent, the kind of vacations we like to go on. And I do believe those things portend long-term compatibility because, my goodness, if she just thinks I'm a monster for eating a steak and she's a vegan, I mean, that's going to create this conflict that you talk about. Certainly couples can peacefully coexist under those circumstances. But when it comes to my wife and I completing each other's sentences, looking each other's eyes and knowing what we're thinking, it portends what some would see as this preternatural ability to have conversations about difficult topics like cheating and what constitutes cheating and, where are we going with our lives, or how do you look at relationships? Even like on a second date, what are you looking for out of your dating relationship life right now? And getting an honest answer because you're not afraid of each other anymore. And, it's been said on this podcast and elsewhere that the measure of quote unquote true love that seems so elusive to everybody is the lack of fear, because if fear is the opposite of love, because of course, if fear is the opposite of love, the less I fear this person, the more I can love them. And if I'm not trusting them, I'm afraid of something. So when couples drop that fear and they gain that trust, then I guess that's like the holy grail of compatibility. The other thing I would add to the conversation that you just put forth is, yes, if someone is flaky, if someone's using this person because they're not hot enough or they just don't like them enough or they just aren't into them enough and they're using them as a placeholder until the better deal comes along, and yes, both men and women accuse each other of doing that, sometimes as a crutch against actually being vulnerable in a relationship. I know the men going their own way think all women do that all the time, as if we as men are angels and never trade in our 40-year-old wife for a younger model and divorce her, So what you're saying is absolutely true, but I always look for a pattern. If a woman comes to me and goes, every guy I've ever dated has dated me for 2 years and then broken up with me when I pressured him to marry me, I don't think it was every one of those guys' fault. She's the common denominator. She's got to look in the mirror. I also know women who can't go on second and third dates without every guy asking her to marry them. So the trust factor, the ability of a particular woman, and if this were a show for both men and women, certainly the shoe could be worn on the other foot. But when there's a woman who just no guy's going to marry her, then she's not trustworthy. If there's a woman out there who every guy wants to marry her, then she's ticking a lot of these major boxes, including, I would argue, being very trustworthy, such that guys go, well, I've seen enough already. I know I'm compatible with this woman, and we're going to live happily ever after. So I do think even though what you're saying is true, we got to account for our own personal patterns in life, don't you think?
Well, when you talked about fear,
Yes.
I've been doing this for 17 years. I have a book called Safe to Love Again.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, relational safety is a capacity we bring into a relationship or not. And a lot of people bring in what's called their attachment wounds, their attachment patterns. If you were in a family that it was not safe to depend on someone, you may say you had a violent father, or you just had a family that was so professional, you only had 15 minutes with your parents every night, as one single married man was. Mom and dad were great. They were both professors, but there was 6 boys in the family, and they were both academics. You got your 15 minutes. And so for him, being in 2 different rooms at night for 12 years watching TV by yourself was normal, but it sure wasn't for his wife. Now, whether you get it that way or some part is afraid of trusting because of all that happened in childhood, that fear is not the sort of fear like, oh, I'm afraid she's going to get my credit cards or because somebody else ran it up. This is an underlying fear that people track in all the time. And you see it with men and women. What I call the Marlboro mate, or they're so afraid of a going away, a relationship, that they want to enmesh it. They want to, hyper track it. Where were you today? What are you doing? You didn't text me back in 10 minutes. Either that anxious or avoidant is based on fear. And if you don't deal with that, you're already bringing in stuff that will predispose you to seeing the fear that you brought in. It's called confirmation bias. If you came in thinking ways dependence isn't good, you will find every little flaw in that person that confirms it, and you will delete the things they did good. So even if you're with a trustworthy partner, you could very well, because of your bias filters from your childhood wounds, not see. Or you could just, the other weird thing is we often pick people based on these old childhood patterns. So we pick people that will not support us, that are not dependable, because what I call, we don't have any rights for that. We don't have any models for that. So when you get into the fear factor in relationships, you really have to look at how parents and other maybe early adulthood relationships predispose your brain to look out for certain patterns. And are you picking based on that, or are you so filtering your relationship that you can't see what you got? And it's all individual which path that goes. And so I would say, I could put this under the next page for the X. Fear is, you got to look at what's your pattern. Why, I got to do it all by myself. That is not what a we is. We is depending on each other and knowing how to have your own back as well. It's both me, I can depend on myself, but I know how to lean on somebody. And it feels good having someone depend on you. When you get into that trust building stage, a lot of people don't feel good about being depended on or depending on somebody. And that will mess with the trust factor too. Someone could be trying to give you your needs, but you don't let them in. As one clinical psych, I was a couple, she was org psych, he was clinical psych. He just looks at me and says, what do you do when your wife thinks she has no needs? And what bothered him was she wouldn't let him in. She was so into her own self-reliance that he felt he wasn't loved. He wasn't necessary. And to some point, we all want to feel needed. Attachment science is not against dependence. It's pro-dependence, just healthy dependence. That's a right to separate and then come back together as a we and have a home port in somebody's life. It's like breathing. You breathe in, you breathe out, you breathe in, you breathe out. You go out, but you come home. And if you can't depend on, you don't have a capacity for dependence or being dependent on, one way or another, you will not respond to each other's bids well if one or the other. You won't always, you'll push away their bids for normal, natural dependence or not receive them. And then the trust begins to fade. And that too is a way of messing with trust. That's a more subtle form of betrayal. It's not where someone just went out and leveraged their needs, but you won't let people in. So if you're looking at what makes lasting, it's really important because a lot of men have been given this idea you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, the Marlboro Man. I've never seen anything other than a horse in a picture with the Marlboro Man. Have you seen another human being? I can't remember seeing one. Horse, maybe, out on a dock all by themselves or up on a mountaintop. If there is any of that running, it doesn't work. And you do have to, and then there's the feeling of, are we afraid of feelings? The bottom line for all attachment is how well do we track feelings, our own and the others. And for a lot of men, we got them turned off early. And if you cannot sense the feelings coming at you and listen to hers and respond at a feeling means she goes, I think my mother has cancer. Now, you could say, gosh, we need to get her a really good doctor then, don't we? That's fix. That will not fly. But if you say, gosh, that must be scary. What else? What are you feeling, hon? Now, if we respond with feelings first and fix second or third, maybe fourth, it's the basis of all attachments. Why I was talking about 4 feelings. You've got to track and respond to feelings. This is what your attachment brain is basing. I have a connection that's trustworthy. If there is emotional disconnection, you don't actually feel their emotions. You just, well, I thought that you were, I see where you feel that, and feel that is not a feeling either. I feel that you were being wrong there. No, I feel frustrated, honey. I feel disappointed that you don't see what's important here about me. And that makes me feel a little unworthy. Or feeling what their feelings. If you really want to know what builds up some of this trust, all attachment is right brain to right brain. Right brain is feeling, left brain, especially in men, not so much. We've got to become masters of reading. I know of reading what's in the room with a woman. I know that for me, the big change for me happened because with a borderline mother, I turned off my feelings and reading them at 4 because it was overwhelming with a mentally ill mother. Best deal available back then, Scott, but not so much later. And when I finally turned on, it was safe to feel what's in the room because, I don't have any borderline mothers in the room with me anymore. I could read people. And suddenly, after about 6 months, when I really got comfortable with my feelings, my own and reading other people, I remember telling a friend in my dating life, I feel like a blind man that got his sight back. Women were broadcasting their feelings and when their needs and when their hopes and their dreams and where they were at me and where I was at with them. They were on all channels. But if you've turned the channel on the FM dial to the non-feeling, you can't pick it up. So the real keys here are you've got to get good with your feelings because there's a whole lot of messages in this society that says you can't have any feelings. I remember, being a halfback on the football team for the time I was, and get the crap hit out of me, and the offensive lineman picking me up and thinking, just shake it off. Don't have any feelings. Who cares if they knocked you into the next century? I'm not saying you should have a kumbaya moment there, but I am saying that there are so many things that tell men to turn off feelings, and they are the emotional GPS in a relationship. This is how a lot of men wind up being on the bad side of the 74% divorce rate because women initiate them. One, they're not picking up where they're really at in the relationship or the woman is, or or they're not responding. And if we can't pick up the feelings, we can't make people feel worthy or cherished or empowered. Those are the other two feelings. So, and all of that is based on how comfortable are we with these feelings. Everybody was given them. They were given to us for a reason. Mother Nature isn't stupid. They are the natural ways our brain communicates safety and closeness. If we pick them up and read them, people feel safe, close, and loved. If we don't pick them up, they don't feel safe, they don't feel close, they don't feel loved. So if you want lasting, get to be a master of reading feelings, your own and other people, see what's in the relationship, respond. If you're not getting or you're not giving the feelings, there's work to be done in the relationship. If it can't be fixed, if it can't be healed, then you move on. That's kind of a bottom line for navigating relationships. Your new GPS for lasting love is read the feelings, particularly, is there welcome with joy? Is there worthy? Is there cherished? You might say honored or respected as men. Or do you feel empowered? If you're feeling manipulated all the time, that's not so much power. If someone gets so angry that they go out and put $3,000 on their credit card, that's retaliation. That's disempowerment. That is not, and that's also mistrust, not feeling cherished. So that move there, and what you're looking for is saying, gosh, when I didn't respond to her telling me her mother was about ready to die of cancer, how worthy, how cherished did I make her feel? Oh, I really didn't. So if you're looking for how to date and find a lasting love, you're looking for how people read their emotions, how you respond to them. And when there's a disconnect, can you repair in a timely, attuned way so it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg? And when those feelings of safety are there, you naturally want to depend on each other in proper ways, and you can build a we where there's trust. If you can look at that, then you've got a formula for lasting. And anything less will probably lead you into the weeds.
All right. So basically everything you're talking about comes down to what you said early on there, which is people have confirmation bias.
Yes.
And that confirmation bias, as our good friend Gleb Sapersky would talk about as basically his life's work, leads to blind spots.
Yes.
So basically all of our experiences growing up, our observations of our own parental units and how they interact, et cetera, even if it was completely dysfunctional, is our normal. And we bring all those observations and all the feelings, all the hurt, all the pain, all the confusion that went along with that into our adult life. And if we feel like a victim, then we start playing the blame game. And then everybody we see is looked at through the lens of they're going to be exactly who I think they're going to be. They're going to hurt me. They're going to be wrong. They're going to be bad. And if we get to the point where we're so proud of ourselves that we really just want to prove our own hypothesis rather than actually be happy in this life, what we'll do is we'll start projecting that on people. And we'll start saying, all right, well, I'm expecting you to be a bad person, so you're going to be a bad person. And then what happens is when this person somehow does something to meet our need and fit our confirmation bias, what we do is go, see, I'm right. I'm never going to be happy in a relationship. And that's the exact opposite of opening up our hearts to saying, hey, you know what? Maybe not everybody was like my mother or my father or my ex or my pattern of people who I've had in relationships so far. And if I change my mindset and if I do some self-work, maybe I can learn how to trust. Maybe I can learn how to be better in relationships and someday welcome someone who I can be in a lasting relationship with. But we've got to want it. We've got to believe in it. And then that's the first and second steps to making it happen. I love it. You said some very profound things today, Gary, and I want to point these guys to your website, which is GarySalyer.com. And guys, you can go there and find all the goodies he has for you at mountaintoppodcast.com/Salyer, Salyer, not Sailor or any of the other various and sundry misspellings potentially of Salyer. It's Salyer. He and I were talking about that before we hit record on this. So go to mountaintoppodcast.com/Salyer, Salyer, and get you some. Also, I'm going to put Gary Salyer's book, Safe to Love Again, at the top of my Amazon influencer queue at mountaintoppodcast.com/Amazon. And if you're listening to this podcast within a week or so of its release, you'll be able to find that book right at the top. Dr. Gary Salyer from Walnut Creek, California, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you back.
Thank you, Scott.
And gentlemen, if you haven't been to mountaintoppodcast.com lately, please go there, check out our sponsors, Jocko Willink's company, Origin in Maine, also the Keyport, and also Hero Soap. Use the coupon code MOUNTAIN10 at checkout to get 10% off your order when you get anything from any of our fine longtime sponsors. Also, gentlemen, I really do want to talk to you. Get on my calendar at mountaintoppodcast.com. Talk to me for free for 25 minutes. I'm glad to hear what's on your mind. It helps us make a better show. And also, if we can help you get better with women in the process, that would be fantastic. Matter of fact, I guarantee results in advance when you get on my calendar and talk to me at mountaintoppodcast.com. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.